Hi everyone, my name is Declan McGlynn. Welcome to Friday Forum Live, Point Blank's weekly broadcast, bringing you exclusive tutorials, artist interviews and industry insight live from East London. Today we're joined by course tutor Anthony Chapman, who's taking a look at Ableton's mysteriously named device, Dark Synth. So yeah, we're going to take a look at Dark Synth, but before we do that, here's what's been happening at Point Blank this week. If you haven't already heard, we're still offering our students the chance to get Native Instruments' massive production suite complete for half price. So head over to plus.pointblanklondon.com for more details on that. We're also giving away free studio kit, including KRK monitors, Focusrite sound card, Novation controller, and heaps of plugins and extras with all Point Blank diplomas. Our April term starts very soon here at our London campus. Places are filling up fast, so make sure you sign up at www.pointblanklondon.com to find out which course is best for you. If you can't make it to London, our online school term starts at the end of this month, and we've loads of updated courses for you to choose from. You can even try our courses for free, and for more details on that, visit online.pointblanklondon.com. So Anthony, how's it going, man? We're going to look at Dark Synth, right?
Yeah. So this is a bit of a weird one,
Okay,
as the name would imply, and also if anybody's kind of checked out the sort of demo video and stuff like that, this is definitely not your run-of-the-mill kind of synth, and I think possibly some people might sort of check this out and their first thought might be, oh, I'm not sure how this is going to work for me. How could I fit that into my track?
Sure, yeah.
Put it this way, it's not the kind of thing that somebody's going to pull out in a situation where they would normally be using Massive or something like that. It's really meant for doing totally different and totally new stuff. And I would say that if you're an Ableton user and what you're looking for is something really different, really genuinely different, and possibly not always, it can do musical stuff, but not always melodic and musical stuff, then this is something that is worth looking at, okay? And so before I sort of dive into it, what I should sort of say is that, as I was saying, this is an additive synth, okay? So the kind of synthesis that we're all used to is subtractive synthesis. And as the name sort of implies, what we're dealing with subtractive synthesis is waves created by oscillators, and then we use filters to subtract certain frequencies, and that's what gives us the different tones. So for example, you got your typical saw wave, and then you use your low pass filter to start subtracting the high frequencies, maybe add a bit of resonance so that the end of your filter is spiked up a bit and you get that kind of growling eow as it comes down. Flip it around, high pass filter, you do the same coming up the low frequencies.
Yeah. So you're always removing something from the pure tone.
Exactly, yeah. So this is how we're kind of, and then you'll be like modulating those values and stuff like that. So, and of course, some subtractive synths have multiple oscillators. Some old analog subtractive synths, like the Polymoog and stuff like that, had huge numbers of oscillators, so they could do the polyphony. But so what we're looking at here is additive synthesis, which is a very different approach, and as a result, it requires a bit of a different approach from the user as well. So with this synth, and before we go on, I should say, this is a Max for Live device. So if you want to use this, you need Ableton Suite, or you need to have bought the Max for Live upgrade for Live. But obviously Max for Live comes free with Ableton Suite these days. But this is a Max for Live device, and essentially the way it works is it can generate multiple sine waves, okay? You can change the shape of the waves and you can scoop them and kind of alter them in other ways. But essentially the essential building blocks are many sine waves, all at different frequencies, which can be harmonic or they can be inharmonic as well. And once we've got all of those running, all of these tones, then we can start to play around with them. We can play around with, there's filters, obviously. We can comb the output of it. So basically we can kind of like put a kind of a comb filter through the spectrum of all these sine waves that are being generated. We can also then, each of these separate generate, what we can have is, if we take a look at the screen here, for this sound, in the spectrum section on the left here, We got the overtones here. These are essentially like the waves that it's generating. So this sound is generating 16 waves, okay? And it's using the sawtooth on the spectrum. So it's kind of like giving it a bit of a sort of sharper kind of tone. And so we've got 16 there playing, but we've got 16 overtones there, but then over here, we've got our oscillators, and we can actually have at the moment we've got 16 generators, each of which is playing 16 of these sine waves, okay? And then we can start to like spread the tuning of those. There's lots of different ways we can modulate that, and you can end up with this kind of like choir-like effect, okay? Now, if we look at the numbers we've got available here, you can see the overtones can go up to 2048, and the generators can be up to 128.
So that's 2048 individual sine waves playing at the same time.
Yeah.
Then within that, another 128.
Yeah, and then 128 instances of the 2000 playing. So it's pretty. So as I was saying to you before, when I was starting to experiment with this, I found it quite easy to bring my computer to its knees very quickly. And this is an i7 MacBook Pro, so you know it's pretty. I was kind of surprised. So I think one thing with this synth is that if you were using it to do really extreme stuff, you might find that it's something where you're freezing and flattening it. You're getting your sound together and then go, okay, let's freeze that, save the preset. That said, and I should mention this, this is the first version of it. I checked yesterday; they hadn't updated it. It does, for me, have a little problem with recalling the presets. So what I've started to do is, if I'm working on something, is saving my own preset of whatever I'm working on. And then when I load it back in, I'll just drag that back in. So if anyone connected with Ableton or the Amazing Noises guys are watching, or they hear about this, I'm sure they're aware of it already. So, so let's just have a quick listen to this. Okay, so I've got this. So this is, just checking this is the right one. Yeah, so this is the sound that we're kind of looking at here, okay? And let's kind of start to play around with this a little bit. Now, one thing I didn't focus in on down here is that it's also got what they call a brick wall filter on the spectrum, on the overtones, on all the sine waves. So we can like start to pull this down here, and we can kind of change the shape of it there. So you can hear like it harmonically sort of starts to change as you alter the parameters of the filter here. We can also change the shape on the fill spectrum. So you see how it starts to give it a very different character there. Okay. So it really is a case of you're going to get the best out of this synth if you really, really start to experiment with it. Okay. Now, if we come over to the oscillators section here, you can see we can change the number of generators that we've got going here. Okay. And we've also got, which I haven't focused on yet, the sub oscillator. Okay, so we've actually got a slightly more traditional kind of subtractive synthesizer kind of within it, and we can use that to kind of beef up whatever's going on with the overtones.
That's actually really useful, because a lot of the time when you're dealing with a lot of harmonics, you tend to lose a sub bass very quickly. And
you kind of need a bit of focus on it, you know. Exactly. And we've got the different waves that we can do here: sine, saw, square, triangle, random, white and pink. It's kind of everything that you would want to do. Obviously, white and pink is really useful for if you're doing kind of like sound effects type material. Okay. But the sine, for this sound, like the sine tends to work really well. Okay. Then we've also got like a kind of regular filter here. So you can start to hear how it's kind of like quite rich, but you can see what I mean. It sounds totally different to like your typical kind of subtractive synthesizer straight away. And I think you said before, there's that kind of the kind of starting point tends to be a kind of organy type tone, or like a bell tone. One thing Additive Synthesis is absolutely first class for is bell type sounds. If you want to do bell type sounds, this is the way to do it. Okay.
I guess it's similar to FM in a way. FM and Additive Synthesis
tend to be associated because there were a lot of synths in the past which kind of married the two up together. So yeah, and it can do a lot of the same thing. And yeah, FM obviously for bells and stuff like that is absolutely brilliant. So this is, this is our typical filter, but we've got a bunch of different sort of values there. We can use the bipolar filter, which is really nice. Now, this next thing is kind of my favourite thing to play with, okay? And this is where you can really start to mess with this. So at the moment, this is quite nice, this is quite musical, but we've got this stretch here, and this effectively can stretch out the harmonic distance between the oscillators, okay? Mm-hmm. So just to demonstrate, so if I really push that, see what I mean? We start to get into like completely insane territory of like distorted space transmissions and stuff like that. And this is why I'm saying, if you're looking for something to do, if you're somebody who is interested in sound design and is in scoring and sort of sound effects and stuff like this could be a really, really useful tool, okay? So, but the stretch there, when you've got like, particularly sort of fairly musical kind of sounds, if it's sort of, it tends to be kind of something that you can really use to sort of turn that overdrive down. That's what's, it just really stretches all the different sounds out, okay? We've got our amp envelope here, which of course, is our typical ADSR envelope. And then in the global section here, we've got like a transpose and a gain. And this, I believe, this is the voices that we could, like the notes that we can play at the same time, which at the moment is 4. But if I go into the edit section here, so this is where it starts to get like really interesting. And I'm not going to lie to you, I've not even scratched the surface of this yet. I've just looked at a few key points that are sort of like important to the stuff that I've been doing the last couple of weeks. And what I particularly like is basically drawing your own spectrum. Yeah. So at the moment, if I come back out a little bit, let's put these sort of together, okay? So you can see, if we look down here, I've got 16 overtones. Now, if I go in there and I go up to, let's say 32, you notice how the spectrum changes there. And the spectrum always kind of reflects whatever value you've got in the overtones box. So basically it's allowing us like to have 32 different sort of values here, which you will then use to build the sound.
So they're like samples within a waveform.
It's effectively, yeah. So you see, when I start pushing up all those higher values, it's like, it starts to become a lot sort of shinier, a lot kind of glassier, But where this gets really interesting is when you start to go into the crazy numbers of overtones. So if you go to like 512, and then we can like, you've got incredible sort of changes you can make there, like, really, really focus in on different bits. And then obviously, 2048, anybody? Like, you can just like, if you want, there's different ways you can approach this. You could just fill it up and pull out stuff that you didn't want, or you can like start with nothing and just put in the harmonics that you think sound sort of quite nice. So, the amount of sort of tweak, I mean, honestly, you could just get lost in this. It's ridiculous. And then, I've not even touched on the pitch, filter and amp page here. We've got additional modulators as well. It's absolutely crazy, If I just want to switch over to this other sound to just show you like, sort of turn this up a bit. So this is kind of like more of a, in this track, I just used this to do like a bit of a kind of subby, partly subby kind of bass tone, which I've slide changed there. So you see, it can be used for your more kind of utilitarian sort of sounds, use it for nice kind of bass sounds and stuff like that. But if I dive into the presets here a second, if we have a look here, I mean, you can see you get a huge amount of presets with it, but some of these are just absolutely like nuts. And it's just like I was saying. I think it's sort of if you're into sound design, this is going to be something that you're going to want to get into. That's taking its time opening that preset up for some reason.
Better be good.
Exactly. There we go. There we go. Yeah. So this is another one of the basses here, and if we start to stretch that like that, you get those weird sort of ring mod kind of effects. But I tell you what, I was really impressed with the filters on it. You know, they're really nice. They're really tasty.
It's very rich, isn't it, in sound?
Yeah,
I mean, that's the nature of the synthesis anyway. But
you've hit the nail on the head there. Additive synthesis, by its very nature, it's all about richness, you know. And I think, you know what, like I was saying about how it is possible to kind of make the computer fall over because there's so much going on in it. I think that's possibly why we've not seen so much of it in recent years in terms of plugins and stuff like that, because I just think it's something that's not naturally suited to this environment. You know, dedicated hardware doing additive synthesis, that's fine, but when you bring your plugin into like a DAW environment, that's a kind of a different matter, isn't it? So yeah. So it's really, I'm not sure, I don't know if you've got any questions or anything like that on this so far.
Someone, Darude117 has just said, what's the name of that preset?
Which one?
The one you just
This
loaded.
one is Dark Snuff.
Dark Snuff, yeah.
I just picked that out at random from the, and all I did was I tweaked the filter here.
It's kind of got that somewhere in between, like a PPG, DX7 kind of tone,
and
but much more extreme capabilities.
You've hit the nail on the head there, because the PPG wave is a classic additive synthesis and wavetable machine. Yeah, Declan, I think it was before we started, you were saying about wavetable. Wavetable synthesis is kind of related to this, whereby rather than having multiple sine waves at one time, it will be there'll be a wavetable, so there'll be like thousands of different waves which the synth will kind of cycle through to generate its tones. So it's kind of based on the same principle, but rather than sticking with a certain type of wave, it's got this huge kind of list of lots of different types of waves. PPG, Waldorf, a lot of the Waldorf synths. I've got a Waldorf Micro Q, which is really good. It can do normal subtractive, but it does really good wavetable synthesis as well. Totally. So
how is it for drums?
That's not something that I've investigated too much, but I've seen on the Amazing Noises YouTube channel, there's a video there, and they use drums for that. I've not actually tried it myself. But I'm not sure there's any presets in here for it. Let's have a look. Yeah, I can't really see anything there. There's an awful lot of presets, as you can see. But you know, let's check this one out, because I think it's really good. Yeah. So this is what I was saying about the kind of like the abstract kind of stuff. Okay.
I guess even if you were performing live, it's a very powerful tool. Just
absolutely
assign the stretch to a knob.
Exactly, you know. I love the way that that burbles really low down. If you hear this here. It's kind of like it's underwater and it kind of emerges out of the water, you know. So, you know, but stuff like this, I mean, if I turn that down a little bit, you know, if I just like, let's... So if I just like record that clip in there, so these kind of sounds, if I go in here, I'll tell you what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull that up a couple of octaves. Let's just put one up there. And sort of these kind of like abstract sounds, if you're doing it in this kind of context, all I did here was threw together a couple of beats, mainly out of the Ableton library, a kind of sort of techno, minimal kind of techno-y sort of beat. But stuff like that, you can just work with dark synths to really kind of get those atmospheres going. And then of course, you get the trusty sidechain out. And of course, it immediately becomes you know, a real like, important sort of rhythmic part of the track. I think it's, straight away. You know, it's like, you know, and then you could start automating the stretch or like changing the shape of the spectrum, changing the brick wall filter and stuff like that, you know. Yeah, it's really, it's, you know, as I was saying, it really is a case of if you want something totally different, if you want to really kind of go out there, this is something that's definitely worth looking at.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
nice one, mate. So we're kind of approaching time there, but where can we get as a...
It's you get this from Ableton. Okay. So this is made by Amazing Noises, who I think are Italian. I believe so. I could be wrong. I apologise to them if I've got that totally wrong. And some of their Max devices, they've got a couple of free Max devices that are really good. They've got a bunch that they sell themselves, which are excellent. But I think I know Ableton did a couple of premium Max devices recently, and Amazing Noises made them as well.
Okay.
And I think they've just kind of decided to sell this through Ableton. Don't quote me on this. I think the price might be €49.
Yeah.
I think so.
I'm pretty sure it is.
But yeah, you get it from Ableton Live, from Ableton, from their website, from the shop. And, you know, like I said, if you want something totally different, get in there, because it's, you know, sound design tool, stuff like that. But like I said, you may find if maybe your system is a bit old, you might need to be printing what you do. You get your sound going and then freeze and flatten it and sort of take it from there.
Yeah, nice one.
Cool.
So yeah, that's it from Friday Forum Live for another week. We'll be back next week. Make sure you stay tuned to our Facebook and Twitter and Google Plus and all that good stuff. And we'll see you next week, so cheers.